Voters from across our region are looking to cast their vote to have a say in who will make it onto the general election ballot. Tonight, we're sitting down with candidates from the U.S. Representative 4th Congressional race. We'll cover a wide range of topics from the economy, to growth in our region, to goals for the upcoming year. Before you cast your ballot, Northwest Public Broadcasting and the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin County want you to know the candidates. Recorded on the Washington State University Tri-Cities campus, this is Vote 2022. And now, from the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin County, please welcome Ravine Jimenez.
Good evening and welcome to this candidate forum. My name is Ravine Jimenez. I am a member of the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin Counties. The League is a nonpartisan organization that neither supports nor opposes candidates. In presenting these forums, it is our goal to provide opportunities for voters to become better informed about the people who are running for public office. The 2022 primary candidate forums have been pre-recorded in person by Northwest Public Broadcasting at the WSU Tri-Cities studio rather than on Zoom. They will also now be available at nwpb.org/vote2022 through our additional partners, the Columbia Basin Badger Club, the cities of Richland and Pasco, and of course the League's website and Facebook page. Please go to lwv/bf.org to see the complete information for accessing any and all of these sites through August 2nd, 2022. At this time, I would like to introduce our moderator, Matt Lovelace from Murrah College of Communication, WSU Pullman. Please welcome Matt.
Well, I want to thank the League for that introduction and for those of you out there watching as this Vote 2022 forum dives into issues for candidates in the 4th Congressional District in the state of Washington. On behalf of Northwest Public Broadcasting, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters in Benton and Franklin counties for continuing our collective mission here of bringing voters more insight into the candidates running to represent them. I'm also thankful we get to do this in person this election cycle. We are coming to you here from the WSU Tri-Cities campus in Richland after a couple of years of virtual forums and debates. Now, we've gone over the rules of this forum with the candidates, and for you out there, here's how this program will go. I'll start with the fact that there are 8 candidates on this primary ballot. 5 of them are in this room here tonight, and a reminder that this forum will last 90 minutes. We'll begin with an opening statement from each candidate, followed by a line of questioning. Now, once the questions begin, we'll rotate the order in which our candidates will answer. 10 questions total, 90-second responses for the first 5. We'll drop that down to 1 minute for the final 5, and I will not make our candidates remember those rules. We'll explain as we go here. Now, as moderator, my job is to keep us on topic and on time, so I do reserve the right to cut off a speaker if time is up or make some fair adjustments throughout the duration of this program. And with that, let's meet our candidates for this race in the 4th Congressional District. And our opening statements will allow them to talk about themselves and their candidacy. Joining us today are Benny Garcia III. Thank you very much for being here. Brad Klippert, Jacek Kopiesa, Jerrod Sessler, and Doug White. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here. Dan Newhouse is the incumbent here. He did not respond to a request to join the forum, nor did Lauren Culp. And rounding out the field of 8, Corey Gibson could not be here, but we do have these 5 here and plenty of time and a lot of questions for this group, so let's get to it. And like I said, we'll start with those opening statements. We are going alphabetically by last name to begin this round and our question round. Mr. Garcia, 90 seconds are all yours.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you, League of Women Voters, also Northwest Broadcasting. First, born and raised Sunnyside, Washington. I'm the only combat veteran. I've also graduated from Central Washington University with a law and justice degree, and all I have to do is 2 semesters to finish up my master's in education. But I ended up working for the federal government as an underwriter for 10 years, been a city treasurer, and last year went to go work the fields in the apples. So I got to tell you, that first month was a little tough, but I lost a few pounds there, and I enjoyed working out in the fields, but I want to make a difference for our community, our country, so I left the federal government because under the Hatch Act, you cannot work for the federal government and run for public office. So I want to go ahead and tell you personally why I chose to run. My Lord and Savior Jesus Christ changed my heart in 2015. And that is why I run God, Family, Country. And I want to make a difference for our country, our community, and make a difference for our small business and our small ranchers and farmers. And I want to make sure that all people are being represented and heard. So primarily that passion when I was Ebony Senate rep in college is the same type of passion that drives me today. So please remember, votebengarcia.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Ms. Klippert, your turn.
Thank you, sir. I'm Brad Klippert, state representative for the last 14 years. Served in the military and retired as 06 Colonel, Commander of the Washington State Guard. 20 of those 34 years I served as a helicopter pilot for the Army. I am currently also Deputy Klippert of the Benton County Sheriff's Office and have served for Benton County for over 22 years now. Prior to that was Pierce County Sheriff's Office, where I received the Medal of Valor for actions in the line of duty. The last few days have been very interesting. Yesterday I was over in the Port of Tacoma helping to resolve transportation issues so that we can get our nation's products overseas to the markets that our farmers and all our producers need. The day before that I was working with a lady to help resolve bus transportation safety issues and a farmer to get resolved issues associated with getting their crops sprayed so that they can spray their crops and not affect other crops. It was very exciting this last couple of weeks. I've received congratulations and news from the Washington State Retailers Association and the National Federation of Independent Businesses that I received their award for 100% voting accuracy on issues that are important in supporting our Washington State businesses. So it's been an honor serving the citizens these last 34 years as a military man, a deputy, and a legislator, and I'm looking forward to doing the same in Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much. Excuse me, Mr. Kopiesa, your turn.
Thank you. My name is Jacek Kopiesa. I was born in Poland, came to the United States at a fairly young age. I lived first in San Francisco, California. From San Francisco, we moved my family, that means my wife and my oldest son, in 1998 in March. So we were here for 24 plus years. And my two other children were all born right here in Tri-Cities, in Richland and in Kennewick. I decided to run because I believe that the United States is right now racing to the bottom of many, many issues. And particularly, you can see the issues which I witnessed as a child, growing up in the socialism and communist, country, especially the Soviet, bloc, that we are neglecting the most needy people. We're sticking our nose into businesses in the countries 5,000 miles away. At the same time, as a Republican party, we're neglecting the higher education. We're neglecting senior citizens. We're neglecting pretty much every single aspect I can think of. I am not a member of establishment, and the establishment doesn't like me, and I think I don't like the establishment. But I intend of plugging along, and maybe I can win. And if I win, I'll make a change.
All right, Mr. Kopiesa, thank you very much. Mr. Sessler, now that I got my voice back, I'll ask you to do your opening statement.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having us, and to the League for hosting, to my fellow candidates for taking the time to be here, and certainly for the viewers. My name is Jerrod Sessler. I am running here for Congress in Washington's 4th District. I'm the product of a pretty difficult upbringing. I had 5 abusive stepfathers, and I thank God for those years because it turned me into and helped me to be the man that I am today with a lot of tenacity and a lot of integrity. I've spent my whole life doing what everyone says is impossible, and I've been pretty successful at it. I've been married for 25 years. I have 3 beautiful kids. They're now grown. We homeschooled them. One of my life dreams, I ran into the kitchen when I was 4 years old and I told my mom, I want to be a race car driver. And eventually got to do that and drive in NASCAR, and I'm also an honored veteran of our great U.S. military. In fact, I received the Navy Achievement Medal for saving some lives on board the USS Constellation, so if you've seen the new Top Gun movie, you know what it's like to be on one of those aircraft carriers. It's very, very exciting. And I've been blessed the last 24 years to be able to run my own businesses, and during that time I've had the opportunity to travel back and forth to Washington, D.C. about 36 times, meet with all of our state legislators, or our congressional representatives and both of our senators, and that's given me a great opportunity to learn about this about this opportunity and this position. So Jerrod Sessler, go to jerrodforcongress.com, and thanks for taking the time to watch today.
Mr. Sessler, thank you very much. And to round out our fifth one here in this forum today in person, Mr. Doug White, your 90 seconds for an opening statement.
Well, thank you for having me here. I'm Doug White. I am the Democrat in the race. I'm a fourth-generation farming family, born and raised in Yakima, Washington. Grew up in a union household. My dad, he retired from Hanford as a union pipe fitter. My background's a little bit different. I was a global project manager. I implemented multinational technology solutions for companies like IBM and PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I also had an advertising agency in Hong Kong for a decade and a half. So I got to watch China go from nothing to probably the greatest that the United States has ever seen. And in doing so, in all that travel, I got to recognize the fact that it's important for the United States to play a leadership role in global politics and maintain that leadership role. But equally as important, it is necessary for us to be able to maintain and expand our foreign markets to our benefit. Now, one of the reasons I came to run is because of the fact that I was looking around my district and I saw that the problems we have today are the same problems that my grandfather used to tell me about when I was helping him in the orchard 50 years ago. Now, these problems have gotten bigger, and now as we've gotten bigger, these problems have gotten bigger as well. And these problems are primarily water, immigration, infrastructure, and now we're facing climate change. I see these problems affecting our economy in a very negative way, and it is going to be my goal to go to Congress and bring our money back to invest in us so that the people that live here can afford to be able to buy the goods that we make and grow here. That is what I plan to do.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Now, we had planned to have Mr. Corey Gibson here. He couldn't make it last minute, but he did submit a statement in his place.
My sincerest apologies for not making the candidate forum today. I'm very grateful to have been extended the opportunity. As I've debated my fellow congressional candidates the past few months, I've come to realize that the people of the 4th District really have only one decision to consider: who will be the most effective policymaker once in office. We share the same values and have a clear understanding of our district's needs. We will most likely vote the same, with exception to Doug, bring a more conservative voice to D.C. than the one we have in Newhouse. I ask the voters look beyond the words and good intentions. We have been electing people based on good intentions for too long. The battle we face in Congress will require a great communicator with the ability to form alliances and coalitions to pass legislation. I am the president and founder of the America First Pact, protecting America's Constitution and traditions, an alliance of House, Senate, and state candidates from across the nation. As the pact grows, so does our ability to fight the swamp we all know exists on both sides of the aisle. I am already proving myself as a candidate with a vision on how to be effective, but more importantly, I am the candidate showing that I can see a vision through to fruition. I ask voters to please research us as candidates. I have outlined my policy positions in far greater detail than the other candidates and ask that you take the time to visit before choosing who you wish to vote for. I will also say that I am confident that it will have more individual donors than all the other Republican candidates combined on my next FEC report. My message is resonating. I am confident that you will vote for me if you agree we need real change and less talk in Washington, D.C. I look forward to answering any questions. Please don't hesitate to call or email. Best of luck to the other candidates today.
Now let's get to a line of questioning. These questions brought to us by the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin counties. And we'll start once again with Mr. Garcia on this round. How important do you believe immigration is to our agriculture industry in the 4th Congressional District? And if you identify problems with it, what are your solutions? And if you could, include DACA in your response.
Yes, I want to include both DACA and immigration. It's critical in our area. You take a look. We need workers, and we've had many people over the years come over, whether illegally or through the H-2A program, to come in and really to our benefit, to our small farmers, and well, I should say to our large farmers and whatnot, and also to our small farmers and ranchers. It is the lifeblood of our community, because you could be as big of a farm as you want to be, but if you don't respect those workers and you don't bring those workers in to work the crops and be able to do successful work in a short period of time, especially when it's picking, because you don't want to damage any of the trees or any of that. So you got to have a skill, and you just can't go ahead and hire someone out of the work source and say, we need you to go pick. That's not going to happen. So it's important that we have a very sound, important relationship with that need. And so unfortunately, Dan Newhouse has failed to continue to meet those needs. But also in part of the program and solution is really taking a look at the per diem, if that can be increased for our larger farmers and also for our small farmers and ranchers to have the opportunity to use the H-2A program for their benefit. And that goes across not just farming, but that's also transportation and other businesses. So we need to utilize those businesses correctly in order for our 4th District to prosper.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. And move on to you, sir.
Thank you, Matt. You know, legal immigration is extremely important to the United States of America. We have been for centuries now, and are still the great smelting pot for the world. We talked about H-2A in the previous speaker's comments. It's extremely important that the H-2A program work extremely efficiently. Farmers do need workers in their fields, both from this country and from outside of this country, but it's got to be done legally. One of the first things we need to do is we need to secure our borders so we get those citizens into the United States that we need to help our business owners, our farmers, to produce those goods and services they produce. But at the same time, we need to be able to keep out those who are harmful to our nation. I mean, the great tragedy that we saw down in Texas in the last few days, where the open border policies that the current administration expresses encourage cartels to put people in the backs of trucks and then leave them to bake in triple-digit temperatures. That is totally and completely wrong. It's wrong for them, it's wrong for America, it's wrong for everybody. So we need to seal our borders, secure our borders, and make sure that those who come to this nation do so in a legal process. We need to expedite that process for those people that we need. There are people from other countries who are doctors. There are people who are engineers. There are people who can work on our farms. All kinds of talents and skills that we need, but we got to make sure that the programs, the H-2A program, are efficient for our farmers, our business owners, and not just for their advantage too.
Thank you, Mr. Klippert. Mr. Kopiesa, same question to you, the importance of immigration on agriculture in 4th District.
You know, this is a good question. I came to the United States myself, you know, but when I landed in New York City, way back when, over 30 years ago, I was escorted off of an airliner by 3 guys, immigration guys. I have to tell them where I was going, what I'm going to be doing, who is going to support me. And I do support legal immigration. That legal immigration needs to be established in such a manner, because all the time we hear DACA this, DACA that, but DACA just left a bunch of people in kind of in limbo. Nothing was finished. So I do believe that we need, number one, just agree with Mr. Klippert, that the border needs to be secure. Without that, there's nothing we can do. So let's secure the border. Second step, let's apply whomever wants to come to the United States at their own countries. So let's say like we want to have people from Mexico to work in this district. Let them apply for I don't know, temporary visa, workers visa, whatever program is in place. And if they meet all the requirements, by all means, let them to come in. And we need these people, without any doubt. But it has to be done in a legal and controlled, manner. And just like Mr. Klippert says about that truck in Texas, that cannot, events like that cannot happen anymore.
Thank you, Mr. Kopiesa. Mrs. Sessler, same question to you.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And just echoing those comments, it is very important. The situation with this truck in Texas that's totally on this illegitimate president's hands and his border policies. Number one thing I would absolutely say is we need to secure our border. Very specific to that. In terms of the question in regards to immigration related to agriculture and the need for that, at the end of the day, our farmers are business people. And they need a business model. They need a business model that'll work, and the labor that makes the most sense in a combination of people who have the skills, the ability, and the willingness to actually do the work that needs to be done in this agricultural community. That group of immigrants has been doing a good job with that, and we need to continue our legal immigration process. We actually have a really good immigration system in this country. The problem is every time you get a new administration, in the White House, in the executive branch, they tend to do what they want to do. We watched it under Obama, where we had basically open border policies. We watched it under Trump, where the borders came under control, the gates of entry started being used, things ran much more smoothly. I've visited the border in both Mexico and Canada. I've seen it with my own eyes and met with Customs and Border Protection. And then now we have just this literal open border policy that leads to a national security issue. It leads to lots of labor issues that hurt our farmers and hurt their ability to be able to run their businesses. So we absolutely need to support legal immigration, and it is for sure needed that our farmers and our entire agricultural community and all of the support systems around it need that labor.
Thank you. Mr. White?
Yeah, immigration has been a concern for a very long time. In my opening statement, I mentioned that 50 years ago, my grandfather used to complain about it, and I got pulled out of school to pick apples pretty much every fall. That's because there was a shortage of labor. But I think right now when I look at this country, we are all pretty much immigrants. There are very few people that can't track their lineage back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 generations. And it has been the way that we have grown for all these centuries. And it has made our economy flourish, and it is the way that we will continue to grow, because it is the only way that we can continue to grow. So I don't really understand why it is that we treat immigration as if it's an attack on our country. We need to change our mindset on that, and that should start with DACA. Anybody who has lived their life here as an American citizen and contributed as an American citizen should be an American citizen. So DACA should go through, and that should be done by Congress, not by executive order. It should be made permanent completely. I also see that we need to protect our border as well. Right now, the people that patrol our borders are turning away close to 300,000 people a month. They are the ones right now that are truly protecting this nation more than anybody else. And I give them great gratitude to that. We need legal immigration, but it needs to make sense. Right now it is too convoluted. People do not understand it. And even H-2A visas right now, which we are dependent upon in Congressional District 4 in order to support our agriculture, it's complicated, costly, and it is also pushing out our small farmers, which is unfortunate. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you. That was just round 1 of questions. You up for 9 more? I think we're ready to go. All right. All right, number 2, and this one's pretty simple, and it has to do specifically with our district here. Mr. Klippert, you get to go first. What's your position on supporting Hanford, both now and in the future?
I love it. Well, first of all, let's go back to the beginning of Hanford. Hanford was part of the Manhattan Project, of which I am extremely proud. If you have never taken the B reactor tour, I encourage every single viewer, take the B reactor tour. It is truly a miracle what took place in 18 months that would take 20 years to do nowadays. The Manhattan Project took place in Washington State, out at Hanford, and that project helped us win World War II. I worked out at Hanford myself. I helped construct there's one of the nuclear reactors was completed in the Whoops project. There were 2 that were not. I worked on all 3 of them in construction. I then went on, while putting myself through college, to work at the North Reactor, 100 North, and while I was an operating reactor, producing electricity, and got to work on the ball channel, which was the safety measure to shut down the reactor should it go out of control. I got to be a part of charge-discharge, and now I patrol the Hanford Nuclear Reservation as a sheriff's deputy for the Benton County Sheriff's Office. So I'm truly proud of the Hanford Nuclear Reservation, and here's the thing. We haven't even touched the potential of that area. I am strongly for the nuclear energy that we use to produce electricity now out there, but we can use small modular nuclear reactors in the future that can be built here and operate here to produce more safe, clean energy.
All right, thank you, Mr. Klippert. Mr. Kopiesa, the same question to you in regards to your support for Hanford, both now and in the future.
This is really amazing. Mr. Klippert, mentioned the Manhattan Project. So we have Los Alamos, and we have Hanford, and we have Oak Ridge, 3 sites which helped win World War II. Some people saying that the B reactor was a disgrace, it needs to be dismantled. I think this is wrong. It shows the greatness of a nation, without any doubts. Hanford, just like Mr. Klippert says, I'm going to repeat exactly what he says. Hanford has right now untapped potential. Everybody's right now talking about green energy this, green energy that, but I do believe in nuclear power. That, without any questions, is the most clean power available to us now. That will give us a time to develop new technologies, and Hanford can participate in development of those new technologies. We've got a helium-3, we've got deuterium, we've got tritium. Some of those new technologies releasing radiation. Some of them they don't. But the Hanford by itself could be such a detrimental place for national, not just for national security, but energy solution worldwide.
All right, Mr. Kopiesa, thank you very much. Mr. Sessler, your thoughts on Hanford?
Yeah, we've got two incredibly, almost virtually untapped resources here in Central Washington. One of them is Hanford and one of them is the Columbia Basin Project. And Hanford is actually really quite amazing. And a lot of people, I think of it more as a cleanup site, which it is to an extent, cleaning up some of the nuclear waste in the past. But I want to point out that nuclear waste, as far as an nuclear energy in terms of an energy source, is the cleanest energy source. 100% of the waste is captured from nuclear energy. And the advances in nuclear energy that we've made over the last 50 years, unbelievably incredible. An incredibly untapped opportunity we have right there with workers at PNNL and the things that they're doing and the technology and the innovation that they're pulling out of that. It's really, really exciting. You know, that along with our dams here in Southeast Washington and the power that's generated from those, the transportation that is enabled from those is absolutely incredible. In terms of the other opportunity I mentioned in the district here in Central Washington, the Columbia Basin Project, we've got hundreds of thousands of more acres of land that we could be irrigating with that project. And I just want to point out to you, Matt, and to the listeners, if we do those kinds of things and we bring more technology and more growth and more economic results here in Central Washington and Eastern Washington, that means we bring more people. That means we can control more of the vote in Washington State. We can bring more congressional districts on this side of the mountain and hopefully help turn the state red.
Mr. Sessler, thank you very much. Mr. White?
Hanford has been a great legacy. It was a dark part in our history. It ended World War II, but it brought in another course of carbon-free energy production along with the dams and so forth, and that has moved us forward as a district. It also brought us PNNL, the National Laboratory, so we are one of the few places in the entire world that has, nation, that has a national laboratory, and they just broke ground on a $75 million facility for just energy storage. So we're moving quick. By 2030, we should be free of carbon fossil fuels in Washington State. We will be one of the first states in order to be able to say that we are energy independent. But to be clear, Hanford does not generate any electricity and hasn't for a long time. That's all done by Energy Northwest. Hanford never will. Right now it's a waste dump, and it's not set to be cleaned up until 2078. And right now, I think it's a great shame that our Congress will not fund it in order to be completely cleaned up. Right now, we are spending about $2.8 billion a year on the cleanup, and that is just trickling along. And in that time, it continues to remain a danger to this state and the people that live here. And the bigger risk is the fact that there are other major cleanup sites around the nation that are about ready to be completed. And when they are completed, it is easy to see that Congress will have a distaste for continuing to fund those things. They lose interest in these things very quickly. So I'm going to demand that Congress goes through and fully funds the cleanup of Hanford so that we can get it done and get it done correctly, because it will always be a threat to us here. It is a nasty legacy, but one, there is some pride in it.
Mr. White, thank you very much. Mr. Garcia, last one for this question. What are your thoughts on Hanford?
Well, I'm going to tell you, Hanford has an incredible brain trust of people within this public and this community. I'll give you an example of that. When I was in Iraq, I went to Camp Yellowcake, the nuclear facility site that Iraq had back in '81, where the Israelis bombed, the Israeli military, Air Force, bombed and annihilated that site. So we escorted a Washington State scientist. He was a lieutenant colonel, lived in Spokane, down over there to that site, and he went to go do whatever studies or overview that he was doing. And, you know, it just shows the incredible amount of brain trust that we have here and how important we are to the world. You know, Hanford is critical. First, it really saved thousands of American lives. So it's not a dark secret, anything dark or anything we need to apologize for. It is war. Japan went and bombed Pearl Harbor. I don't see an apology for that. And I'm going to say, as a combat veteran, us as Americans never need to apologize for something we didn't start, but we finished it. Now, as far as Hanford itself, the federal government needs to ensure that cleanup is up to date, funded, and taken care of. They own that. And they owned it, and it saved American treasury. The most important treasury there is American blood and soldiers' lives. So I worked over there at 200 West myself, doing concrete work and helping develop that site. So I'm all for protecting it and ensuring that we continue to have future cleanup and the money and resources needed to take care of it. So no apologies.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. All right, moving on to question number 3. And Mr. Kopiesa, this one you'll begin. And obviously a hot button issue right now, one of several. Certainly it feels at any given time. But if elected, what specific pieces of Washington state gun legislation would you support? Also, what's your position on banning what are colloquially known as assault weapons, AR-15s, in the state of Washington?
I wouldn't have any plans on banning, AR-15. AR-15 is labeled by the other side as the assault weapons. Any weapon is designed to assault, whether it's a handgun, revolver, Colt, Remington, name it. Those guns are designed to kill. Right now, as it stands, everybody says this is a hot issue, but I like to say that guns by themselves, they don't kill people. People kill people. The same time we had this tragedy in Oklahoma City where FAA facility was bombed, and that was a truck and a fertilizer used in that specific attack. World Trade Center, airplanes used to kill how many people? Over 3,000 U.S. citizens died in that attack on U.S. soil. The left is trying to use or I would call them Marxists. They're trying to use the guns as a hot button, but if the country is disarmed, you're going to have the same situation like you had in the Soviet Union or in Venezuela just recently, and pretty much you cannot defend yourself against the government. Is not. I don't believe there's. I need a gun to have against my neighbor, but to help. If the government ever steps up in the wrong direction, we as citizens, we need to be able to defend ourselves.
Mr. Kopiesa, thank you very much. Mr. Sessler, same question for you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. This issue is an interesting one. You say it's a hot button issue, but I don't really think it's a hot button issue. It's just something that people who like to put their visors on, who don't want to look out past anything beyond what's in front of them, they tend to use this as a knee-jerk reaction. The Second Amendment is very clear. It ends with "shall not be infringed." And so in terms of the question, what would I support in terms of legislation to limit our abilities and our rights underneath the Second Amendment? Nothing. In fact, in Congress, I will work hard to build a coalition with other congressmen to pull back legislation that limits those rights. Let me just take you back in time to 1791 when our Constitution was, our first 10 amendments were finally ratified into the Constitution. If you look at those, obviously we know our First and Second Amendments. Most people don't pay attention to a lot of the rest, but if you read the first 10 amendments, you'll see that fully half of them have to do with the treatment of prisoners. And so the question with that is were they more concerned about the treatment of criminals, or were they concerned about how tyrannical governments imprison innocent people? And that is the reason why we have a Second Amendment. We should be equally armed as our government.
Mr. Sessler, thank you very much. Mr. White, your thoughts?
Yeah, all of us shared a stage not too long ago in Tenasket, and one of the questions that was asked is whether or not we supported the Second Amendment as it was written, and I clarified and said, the Heller decision, which is a Supreme Court decision that came down, kind of clarified the fact that we have the right to bear arms. We really do. That's unequivocal right now. It's the way it's written. And I grew up in Central Washington, and most of everybody I know, we grew up with guns around. In fact, we still have one at the front door and the back door. But we grew up different. We grew up with a certain respect for it that seems to have been lost. I mean, these crazies out there that are out there just shooting people down, I don't understand it. I was raised with what we call the one bullet rule. And that was, if you're not holding your rifle, you don't have control of it, that bullet is out of the chamber. And if you're holding it and you've got control over it, then the bullet is in the chamber, and you only need one bullet, because if one bullet doesn't do the trick, you don't get a second chance. And that's what I live by. So I don't understand these things. If somebody walked into my house with a high-capacity magazine holding 100 rounds and said, "I want to go hunting with you, Doug," well, they're not getting in my house. So, I think there should be limits.
Mr. White, thank you very much. Mr. Garcia, your thoughts?
Yes, well, on the Second Amendment, I can tell you this. What I hear is Washington State's concealed carry permit license, it's a pretty expensive piece of paper, especially with what's happened lately with our laws here in this state, but I will not infringe whatsoever on our Second Amendment rights. I've been in other countries where you see a tyrannical government take over. If you don't have a picture or two of Saddam Hussein in your home, your family may be executed. Now, whether you are a hobbyist, whether you just love the weapon, whatever the case, that is your business. Now, to say that's an assault weapon, well, I can tell you, I can understand how to break down and put a 50 cal together and make sure that it operates correctly. And I can tell you, that's a real war weapon, or a 240 machine gun, some of the things that I've been trained on. And I can tell you, any of these gentlemen here, whatever weapons they may have, they've purchased it legally, and it is not unauthorized weapons to have. So the left just tries to separate us and play the mind games. And the honesty of it is, the people that are following the laws are not breaking them. And in all honesty, it saves more lives to have a weapon on you, to prevent theft, to prevent your harm to your body, or others trying to threaten your life. And it's a great equalizer, especially for women, when they may end up getting raped. So there's a lot to take a look at, but taking away our rights, that's not one of them.
Mr. Garcia, thank you. Mr. Klippert, your thoughts, sir.
90 seconds for this one is not quite enough. But let's try to get it done. So our founding fathers were brilliant. When they wrote our Constitution and those 10 amendments, that Constitution, those 10 amendments were designed to protect everyone. Weapons, rifles, pistols, are a tool that we can use to protect us, to go hunting, and so I strongly support the Second Amendment and the Constitution of the United States. My daughter was taught one time in preschool that guns are bad. So I've been born and raised on a farm, or born in Sunnyside, Washington, raised on my dad's several farms, and then we ended up being a part of that as I became an adult and raised my children. And when she was taught in school that guns are bad, like others have said, I said, no, guns aren't bad. Guns are a tool. And I took her out, and when we slaughtered beef, I showed her how guns are used as a tool to help us do that. Whatever animal we happen to be putting on the dinner table for myself and for all the children of the Bailey Memorial Youth Branch where I used to work. So guns are a tool. Guns aren't bad. As previously stated, it's people who cause these harmful acts on other people. For instance, the young lady that I was helping the other day referenced bus safety. Her husband was killed as a bus driver when someone attacked him with a knife, not a gun. So there's multiple tools that can be used to harm individuals, but guns can be used as tools of protection also, not tools for harm.
Mr. Klippert, thank you very much. Well, next question, and Mr. Sessler, you get to start here. If you're elected, we're going to talk about the dams probably in Washington State, I would think so. So whether or not to remove them is a big issue that affects many groups. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've actually made several trips down to Idaho, meeting with folks down there because for those of you who don't know, there's Representative Simpson who is in Idaho who has been a lot of the catalyst for trying to get these dams removed. So if you just think about that politically, you have a representative from an adjacent state who's lobbying with our Governor Kingsley and the Governor of Oregon to try to get dams removed that affect us in our lives here in Washington State. That should probably give him some good points, and maybe that's why he got reelected in Idaho recently, or won his primary. So obviously the dams need to stay. The dams don't just provide us with clean energy, as I mentioned previously. They also provide water for agriculture and transportation. Those are the biggest things. The transportation that happens on our rivers is incredibly inexpensive, and to try to replace that would be much more difficult, a lot of wear and tear on trucks and roads and equipment and cost and fuel and carbon emissions, all these kinds of things. And so the dams obviously need to be protected. but I would take it one step further. I think that we need to combat a lot of the legal lawfare that's going on. You know, we have nonprofits in Seattle, for example, that are literally have made it a business of collecting money on people's fears that somehow salmon are going to go away because of these dams, and it simply isn't true. They've made a business of collecting money and lobbying against it. We've got permits for dams that have to be renewed regularly and end up in lawsuits every single time, and the only winners are the lawyers, and the losers are all of us who are paying higher energy costs.
Thank you, sir. Mr. White, your thoughts on the idea of removing dams in the state?
This question gets asked everywhere I'm at. In fact, I have a timer on my watch to see how quickly it actually gets asked. You know, this argument's been going on for 70 years, maybe even longer and stuff like that. And, you know, I honestly, it doesn't matter whether or not the dams stay or they go up. In my lifetime, I don't see them coming down just because of all of what Jerrod just said right here. It's a mess and it's a tangle. So as a representative, I'm going to do what I can do, and that is prepare this district for the future. And the things that I can do is prepare us for becoming energy independent. I've talked about the $75 million facility that's being built in order to work on energy storage. We've got the facility that's being going forward in Goldendale, $2.5 billion for energy storage. And also, I think it's probably one of the greatest shames of this country that we took out our rail system. And right now, the greatest thing that we can do is to rebuild the rail, and then we don't have to depend on the barges, we don't have to depend on the roads, we don't have to depend on the trucks. It's the most efficient and economical way in which to move people and products about. And we got a little taste of what that can be out of the last legislation that came down, right, for the infrastructure. And that allows us to build a little bit of the rail, and a little bit of the rail gets people to understand how efficient it is and how effective. So those are the things that I can do now, okay? I can't get the dams down. I can't get them down probably in my lifetime, like I said, but I can prepare us for the future.
Thank you very much. Mr. Garcia, your thoughts?
Yes, I'm all about transportation. I'm all about going ahead and having more energy. I'm all about clean energy. I'm all about ensuring that we protect our dams. I'm not going to shut the lights off in our community, nor am I going to go ahead and risk what our whole farming system is all about in the 4th District. So, you know, as you debated that Mr. Simpson had gone ahead and said that he wants to tear down the dams. Well, I don't understand where that ludicrousy comes from, you know, when it's so vital and important to each and every one of us in this community. But what I will say is that Democrat leadership has taken away a lot of trying to take away your energy resources, fossil fuel, and trying to go ahead and, you know, support people that are all about taking dams out. And you got to ask yourself, why are these even being brought up? It's being brought up to divide us. Every one of us know here how important these dams are. And, you know, like Doug had said, he's not going to go ahead in his lifetime, going to go ahead and see it come down. Why? What are we even fighting about? Instead of coming together and realizing what a great infrastructure that we have. Because let me tell you, it doesn't happen all the time. As a community development specialist for the federal government, to get all that to occur, happen with your taxation dollars and be successful, I can tell you about an unsuccessful project in California, Solyndra, under the Obama administration. That was bright and brilliant, and it went bankrupt.
Mr. Garcia, thank you very much. Mr. Klippert,
Thank you,
up to you, sir.
Our dams are absolutely, positively essential. We must keep our dams up and operating. I've gone on several tours of the Snake River Dams tours, and I asked one of the speakers who is a electricity expert, and I asked him the question after he gave his presentation. I said, what would happen if we took these dams down and then everyone bought electric cars and they all plug them in at night expecting to charge their cars and get to work the next day? And I quote that expert in electricity and energy production, we'd be screwed. And so they're absolutely positively essential. Yeah. Let's talk about transportation and reduction of CO2. If you'll go to the McDairy Dam, which is just between Kennewick and Umatilla on the Columbia River, go up to the observatory, turn right, you'll see a plaque on the wall. It shows you the difference of how many barges, well, how many trucks first, then how many rail cars it would take to transport the same amount of product that one barge transports. So if you're trying to reduce CO2, You want to keep those dams because those barges are so much more efficient than trucks or rail. And those dams provide irrigation to water our crops. We need more crops. The man who sits in the Oval Office says we're going to have food shortages now. Why would you want to take down dams when we use that water to irrigate the crops that feed our people? Bad answer. Bad thoughts altogether.
Mr. Klippert, thank you very much. Mr. Kopiesa, you, sir.
You know, yes, this question is being asked all the time, but it's a no-brainer. I mean, we all agree in here that, you know, the dams will stay, no matter what. This is vital to national security. And now I'm going to bring, so beside the transportation and some other, you know, issues that, you know, we've been all agreeing on, here's a funny situation. Ukraine is right now fighting Russia. They don't ship as much grain to other countries as they would like to. Well, we can step up and you know, boost the production of, you know, grain right here in this in the fourth congressional district. For that, we need to have a water. Well, without the dams, there's no water. There's no irrigation. I mean, it's just plain simple. You know, let's call this physics, mechanics, common sense, whatever you want to call this. And like just like those people who want to remove the dams, they are doing this for money. This is political opposition. They are designed to basically sow a discord, you know, among, you know, people. At the same time, they becoming pretty wealthy, just like a Sierra Club or, you know, these people who are trying to breach the dams. I don't even know how to answer this question, but this is ridiculous.
Mr. Kopiesa, thank you very much. All right, that was question number 4. Question 5 here, another good one from the League of Women Voters of Benton and Franklin counties, which recently had a public discussion on election security in Washington state that featured Benton and Franklin County auditors and the Secretary of State. So the question, Mr. White gets to go first this time. Do you believe in the integrity of the election process in our state, and why or why not?
I absolutely do. We have been through repeated audits and tests in order to prove that we have probably one of the safest election processes in the nation. In addition to that, we have one of the most open election processes. So you can have same-day registration. Everybody does mail-in ballots, or you can drop it off, but it's mail-in, it's delivered to your door. I believe that everybody should have a right to vote. There should be no infringement whatsoever. I think it's protected under the Constitution, and there is no reason why we shouldn't encourage people to vote and make it easier for them in every possible way, as long as it remains safe and secure, which it has been proven to be here in Washington state. I'm very proud of our election process in Washington state.
All right, Mr. Wright, thank you very much. Mr. Garcia, do you believe in the integrity of the election process here in the state?
Well, what I will say is I want to see integrity improve. And I want people also to get registered to vote. Your voice matters in every aspect. As a matter of fact, you can go to Granger, Washington, Radio KDNA on the 22nd. Go get registered and vote, because your voice matters and it makes a difference with each and every one of us and who your president is. So for me, yes, I want to go ahead and see improvement to where we make sure that our state of Washington gets a form of would say ID card. You know, we all get a license. I want to make sure that that vote matches that individual for accountability. And there's other proposals that are up in the air that I'm looking at and reviewing, and I'll be talking to other individuals about that. But it is critical that your vote matters and that you're being represented and your voice is being heard. In my opinion, I would love to go ahead and see the moment that you turn in your ballot, that it's electronically, you're able to go ahead and see it on, you know, Secretary of State's website and see that vote right there. It went to that candidate. That would be truly awesome, because then you know that ballot is representing your voice. There's no greater voice to have. I mean, that's what makes this such a great country, you know, but I will not support a national system, because if we get somebody that wants to change the system, it could be absolutely horrible.
Mr. Garcia, thank you. Mr. Klippert, your thoughts on the election security of our state?
Sir, the 2020 elections were not secure, and the integrity was not there. You can watch the movie 2,000 Mules. You can see the evidence there. I've talked to experts from around this nation experts in election security. You can go to the auditor's office and get the tallies of each of the election tallies of every county in Washington State, and you can see how it was not secure, and the integrity was simply not there. What I support for the future to make sure we do in fact have secure integrity, let me back up for a second. There's a lady who lives in the 4th Congressional District. I went to her home recently. Her husband died suddenly 6 years ago. And she asked me to perform, her family asked me to perform his funeral. He was a teacher, and I happened to work at the same school. I did his funeral. She said, Brad, I still receive every year his ballot. And I've called the auditor's office every year and told him he's been dead for 6 years. Please quit sending me his ballot. But they still continue to send it. So I totally and completely support a paper ballot, that you have to go and vote in person. You have to present identification that you are in fact a U.S. citizen, and then those ballots are counted by hand, not by machines that can be hacked into. So our 2020 elections were not secure. We can make it better.
Mr. Kopiesa, I'll move that question on to you as well.
You know, I would love to say that I do believe those elections are secure, but looking back in time, Joseph Stalin said many years ago that he doesn't care about who is voting for whom. What he cares about, who counts the vote. And right now, if you look at this 2020 security, that movie 2000 Mules, the audit which took place in Arizona, our cases here in Washington State, where we had a Dino Rossi who apparently won the election, then there was a recount and he lost like 80 some, whatever the number of votes was. Eventually he lost the election because they keep finding votes behind a dumpster conveniently in Seattle. I do believe that there is a room for improvement, and as a matter of fact, when we were in Tonasket, I spoke with an ex-Boeing engineer who retired, and he says he came up with a concept about how to improve the election security, but nobody wants to talk to him. But we have to look at possibility of improvement, because there is always room for improvement, no matter how we slice it and dice it. And I would love to say we're secure, we're not. Can we improve it? Yes, let's work on that.
All right, Mr. Kopiesa, thank you very much. All right, last one for this question, Mr. Sessler. What do you think of election security in our state?
Matt, I'd like to reorient the question just a little bit, because I don't think it really matters what I think. What I'd like to reorient the question is what does the general public in Washington think about our election system? And my take on that and talking to people is people don't feel like it's secure. They feel like it needs work, it needs to be improved. Brad and I had the opportunity to travel to Sioux Falls for Mike Lindell's Cyber Symposium. It was about a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago. And we got to see engineers and technologists spend 3 days show us how the 2020 election was stolen and what different ways that people can get into computer systems and different things like that. Obviously, I think all of us have probably watched 2000 Mules. It's an amazing documentary that really shows one of the key ways that that the 2020 election was subverted. And I think that, in my opinion, what we need to do, and I think what the people of Washington State want to see doing, and first of all, let me just say two things. One, I'm so thankful for all the people that are working in the election process. I did a tour here in Benton County of our election center, the count center, and they've built a new facility, and I think it's really good. And I think the work that they're doing is good, short of some changes that we need to make. But the people, I think, are doing a good job. What we need to do is we need to have, I'd also recommend you look up Mark Fincham's ballot process in Arizona, because they're really doing some great work down there. Wendy Rogers has been an amazing warrior down there for election integrity. But we need a voting day. We need unique ballots that are papered. We need to keep them out of computers. We need to meet together as like PCOs, precincts, where there's only a few hundred of us, where you kind of know your name, and you meet together, you vote, you have a unique ballot, you count the ballots, and that's the way it works, and that's the way it's secure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sessler. All right, now for this next round of questions. We've gone through 5 so far. We're going to start over with you, Mr. Garcia. We're going to reduce the response time to 1 minute for this, so not exactly a lightning round, but just a little less time for your responses. And moving on to question number 6, based on the expanding national debt, where do you stand on eliminating or reducing Social Security and or Medicare?
Well, I'm not about reducing Social Security or Medicare. Right now, we need to go ahead and look at other ways to go ahead and reduce our spending. You know, for example, the $40 billion for Ukraine, that should have never passed. You know, NATO needs to step up, and NATO needs to go ahead and handle their backyard. But what I would like to see is Social Security reform. For those receiving Social Security that are eligible, you know, we tell you make all this money before you qualify for Social Security. I want you to go ahead and continue to make, if you got a full-time job, continue to make whatever money you're making and collect Social Security without a penalty. You know, you've earned all that. That's all your money you already paid taxes into. I want you to be able to receive your full benefits. You know, and that also is going to make a difference on the household income for those seniors. I don't want to see them struggle. I want them to go ahead and they paid into that benefit and receive those. Also, if you have cancer. Oops.
Sorry, we ran out of time. You caught that just at the right moment. All right, Mr. Klippert, to you.
So Social Security and Medicare. Social Security needs to be provided to those who truly need it. I've been a school resource officer for years now, a couple decades. And I remember one day, the school considers me, one of the schools I work at, or many of them, consider me part of the staff. A lady came and she was trying to get her son, her child, on Social Security. The interview process took place and they said, your son doesn't need that. She kept shopping for different interviewers till she finally got her son on Social Security after others said, your son doesn't need Social Security. And so the point is that Social Security should be preserved for those who truly need it. Medicare is a part of our system now that I would not stand for abolishing it or getting rid of it. But we got to make sure that we take measures to drive down our national debt. So for one thing you could do to preserve Social Security, I'm 65 now. I'm willing to work a few more years to make sure I contribute enough to the system to keep it alive longer.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Kopiesa, your thoughts?
Social Security needs to stay as it is, meaning we cannot take it away from people who are really in need. What I would change is, let's say, Medicare, because right now the way how Medicare is structured is basically based on your income. So let's say that someone had a good job and they have $1 million in a bank account. The house is paid off, and they are not drawing any salary, but they have money. They have the resources to make a comfortable living. These people will claim Medicare and they will get it for free because they don't get, as I said, an income. They don't collect an income. But at the same time, what we need to do is basically preserve the Medicare for people who are really low on assets. You have to take a look at how much assets they have. Everything has to be taken into consideration because many people are really truly needy, and the system is simply disqualifying them, and that's not the way how it's supposed to be.
Well, thank you very much. And Mr. Sessler, the question on the future of Medicare from your perspective.
This is a difficult situation. So first of all, anybody who's paid into these programs deserves to get some benefit out of it, but continuing to collect it perpetuates the problem. And at some point we have to put a solution in place, and we're just a few years away from that entire program being bankrupt. And so we have to start to look at it, and here's the problem with that. If we continue with it as it is, what you end up with is the people who are really in need, who actually rely on that and need it, they end up with what I call declining benefits, because we've got incredible inflation, which means everything is costing more, and then we've got this empty bucket, so to speak, of funds that are supposed to support people who've paid into it most of their lives with their needs. But yet, so the cost of the needs is going up while the supply of the money to pay for it is going down. And so you end up with basically two different societies of care. And to me, that's a problem. And so we can't just continue to kick the can down the road. And we have to actually put solutions in place. And first of all, that starts with having reasonable national, reasonable control on our finances nationally, and looking at how are we spending our money and tightening up those purse strings in Congress.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sessler. Mr. White, you, sir.
Social Security, I don't believe it's an entitlement program. People pay into it. It needs to stay. Medicare, I think it's a safety net. It's far from perfect. I have elderly parents, and I know it's a long ways from taking care of all of their needs. Fortunately, they've got enough money that they can buy the supplemental insurance and take care of themselves, so we're very blessed in that respect. The other part of the question was about the deficit, wasn't it?
Well, the preface of the question was based on the expansion of the debt. Where do you stand on the reduction of these?
Well, I think the government is pretty irresponsible on how they spend their money, and I think they need to start being more accountable. If they ran their budgets like we ran our household budgets, it'd look very different. I don't understand how they keep coming up with money for things that they want, but for things that we need, such as education, Medicare, Social Security, Veterans Administration, all of a sudden they come up short. That's not good math as far as I'm concerned.
All right, thank you very much. All right, moving on to question number 7 now. Mr. Klippert, you go first here. And interesting topic. There have been several proposals in regards to the elimination of student loan debt. And the latest proposal I think we saw would cancel up to $10,000 per borrower. So in your opinion, Mr. Klippert, should student loans be forgiven in some way, and why or why not?
Should student loans be forgiven by the federal government, dollars from taxpayers? I would absolutely positively not support that proposal. I started college my first year out of high school, and I went to school after I made enough money to go to college. When I ran out of money, I went back to work. And then when I made enough money to go back to college, I went back to college. When I ran out of money, I went back to work. So I graduated with my bachelor's degree with 0 debt and went on to get a master's degree. So you can, in fact, work and pay your way through college. So that's what I totally and completely support. It makes you value that much more when you've had to work for it than if it's given to you or that debt's forgiven. Now we have critical needs in certain areas. It's like in physicians, pathologists, there's a huge need for pathologists right now. I do support the idea that if you study and work to become a pathologist, that we can forgive that debt because your country has a critical need for that particular profession.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Kopiesa, your thoughts on canceling student debt?
I believe that many of the schools or universities are creating programs just to lure students in, and they will say like, okay, when you graduate, you have a 6-digit income, life is good. Many of the programs, like when you see, because like schools are supposed to be for engineers, lawyers, doctors, and such, but any time when you see something says study in it, to me that's a fake program. And many people are basically falling, victim to that false advertisement, from many schools. And this whole this is basically a predatory lending, and that has to be looked at. And I think the schools need to be, schools, not just the students, but the schools also need to be, held accountable for what they do, for that, for the incorrect or predatory type of information.
All right, Mr. Kopiesa, thank you very much. Mr. Sessler, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I absolutely disagree with forgiving student debt. Let me just explain why. I've spent the last 20-some years of my life in the service industry. I love home construction, I love home repairs, I love the service industry. I've helped franchise businesses in my own company for hundreds of people all across the country. And just think about those guys. They spend maybe $50,000 and to buy a nice van or a truck, and then maybe they spend another $10,000 or $20,000 to fill it up with tools that they can use to do their job. And let's say they didn't go to college. But what's the difference? If you go to college and you spend $100,000, or if you spend $100,000 to start your own business, are we also going to forgive the debt on this work truck and tools? It just doesn't make sense. And here's the other thing: we need to start sending smarter people to Congress, because we actually created this problem. So tell me for a second, why is it that a college president needs to earn $250 million a year? What exactly are they doing that values them at that point? What's happened is we've made student debt so easy to get that a lot of people have gotten it, and the cost of college has gone up because the money was very cheap and easy, and now the government's coming along to forgive that? No.
Yeah, Mr. White, we'll move that same question to you.
Yeah, I don't think we should forgive student debt. I think we should probably look at eliminating some of the interest on it, because I do believe it has been predatory and too high. And I am very concerned by the fact that the cost of education is exceeding pretty much the cost of everything else. And so And we also push, as a nation, we push people to believe that they need to go higher in their education in order to be able to just start in the workforce. And I think there's something wrong with that, because if we're not giving people sufficient amount of education at high school in order to be able to start a career or an apprenticeship program or whatever, and they feel that's need to, then we need to be doing a better job of going in there and finding out why it is that these are inflationary, predatory prices. But no, I would not forgive student debt. Jerrod here and several other people, no, your debt is yours. You're investing in your future. You need to take it on and you need to own it.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Garcia, your thoughts?
Yeah, excuse me. No, I don't want to forgive student debt, but there is a part to where our military has needs, or to our government has needs. You know, I can tell you as a wounded warrior, spent 3.5 years at Fort Lewis. We don't have specialists that can go ahead and do certain type of surgeries, you know, urologists or other aspects. And we need to be able to see about possibly reducing that risk for those type of specialists to be able to make a difference within not only our military, but here at home. So in that aspect, I would like to go ahead and see a change and recruit for that. But as far as our education, we need to hold our education institutions responsible. They go ahead and see these young kids going into a higher field of education, and they see them as dollar bills. Their programs are not necessarily successful right now after they graduate, competing in a global economy. We need to hold those institutions liable for failure. I need to see better success, and I need you to see lower your rates of tuition so it becomes more affordable.
All right, thank you very much. All right, next question. Certainly on top of mind for a lot of people right now, the recent Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade has put the issue of abortion to the states. Just a matter of your stance on the decision and where we go from here. What legislative policies would you support regarding abortion? Mr. Kopiesa.
You know, I really don't know how to answer that very well in 60 seconds. The problem is that we have to have a respect for life. That's number one. Number two, who am I to tell you what you're going to do with your own body? I can't. At the same time, if you look and know what happened in Europe in many countries, Ireland, Italy, Spain, where women who were pregnant were going to, for example, England, and there was underground clinics where the women were seen by the what they call them jackknife barbers. Many of the women were mutilated. Medical problems. It's a difficult situation. It should be. I think that this decision should be basically between the woman, or maybe the husband and wife, and the doctor. You know, the government should not participate in any form of saying that abortion is or is not legal.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sessler, your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I'm a conservative Christian, and I believe that the decision that was made by the Supreme Court recently was a correct one. I think that in 1973, the Roe v. Wade, it's a very interesting case. It actually it was made to be about abortion. It was engineered to be about abortion, but it was really about privacy. And in fact, Jane Roe, which wasn't her name, but she actually never did have an abortion, and she was actually against abortion, and she fought against it her entire life, especially after that, and she was sickened by the fact that this precedence was used to propagate abortion. It's an atrocity, and if you look at some of the numbers, 60+ million children aborted in America over the last 49 years. If you look at that, that's a couple of generations. We literally could have added maybe a third or a half of our country. We could be at 500 or 600 million people in America as a result of that. So I think it was a good decision. We need to stick with it. We need to push it to the states, let the states decide. That's the way this union is determined. Hopefully that'll motivate people to go vote for good state legislators that'll enact good laws in each state to support life. The Constitution is very clear about protection of life. The only question is, when does life begin? To me, it begins at conception.
Thank you very much. Mr. White, your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, first, I don't think anybody is pro-abortion. That's not really what it is, but that's a word that gets tossed around a lot. I think the Constitution is very clear, and the framers were right in protecting our privacy. They knew that was one of the most important things that they could do. I think also the Constitution is clear on the limitation of government intervention and the separation of church and state. I believe in a woman's autonomy over her body, and I do not believe that any of us as men, I know I can't speak for all of them, but if somebody was to do that to me, try and invade into my space and my personal life like that, I think I would find it appalling, and I don't think we would have any problems with passing the proper legislation to make sure it never happened.
All right, thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Garcia?
I am pro-life, except for an exception where the mother's life's in danger or the child, then I just wish for the best outcome. I am a Christian, and I support the fact that every life is its own creation, and that we are created in the creation of Jesus Christ. So for me, I'd rather see preventive measures of before someone gets pregnant. And we also need to have the fathers step up of that child. If you know, men need to be able to step up and be more involved with their children. You know, you take a look, there's over 55 million children that have been aborted. For them not to be with their family, for them not to live the ups and downs of life, for them not to be able to have their own individual voice, I hear them, and I'm not going to go ahead and say that I am for abortion. I want them to live their existence, because we all created special in the Lord Jesus Christ's eyes. So that's where I stand on it.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Mr. Klippert, your thought.
Thank you, sir. Totally, completely agree with the Supreme Court's decision. Originally in the United States of America, it was 13 colonies. And some of those colonies were hard-pressed to join a United States. They were afraid that they would lose their states' rights, their own autonomy. And so I totally support this, because what they decided was it simply goes back to the states. And that's why our founders wrote the Constitution the way they did, and especially the 10th Amendment. So I'm pro-life. I believe that life begins at conception. And I also strongly believe in what our founding fathers said in the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And among these are life. And that goes for the mom and the baby. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you very much. All right, moving on to question number 9, if you're counting out there at home. And this one, we've talked about a couple of issues that maybe not everybody can agree on. This is a question about the issues that we can. What are those issues, especially maybe in this congressional district, where you can see eye to eye? And maybe what's your favorite issue that you can see eye to eye on with the other side of the aisle?
Yeah, I think for us here in Central Washington, to me the biggest issue is opportunity. And we did touch on this earlier, but you know, to me the biggest opportunity that's easiest is the Columbia Basin Project. And the reason is that we're 70 years in, we're only 65% done. The Columbia Basin Project was designed to irrigate about 1.1 million acres. I think we could go well beyond that. The difficult part about it was things like the Grand Coulee Dam, and you think about the era in which that was done, and the difficulty with what they had to do in order, you know, in terms of tools and equipment and resources to be able to build that, you know, 70 years ago. It's actually embarrassing. Now, we've got canals already built. All we have to do is basically build spurs off of those canals and put in pump stations and be able to expand that. That increases our ability to produce more food, to produce more financial freedom and more businesses in Washington State, especially here in Central Washington. And that allows us to be more independent. And that's exactly what we want.
Sessler, thank you very much. Mr. White, what are those issues in your mind that people can agree on here in the
I think first and foremost it's the economy. When the people that are living here can't afford to buy the products that we make and grow here, that's a big problem. I mean, we used to do great things. I mean, we built the dams, we electrified them, we built reservoirs to water the desert, we've got the great crops, stuff like that. We bought Hanford, we had a big conversation about that. So we used to do these great things, and somewhere along the way, our politicians just kind of abandoned the whole concept of we needed to move forward as an economy in Central Washington. And I see that coming back. I have a plan. I think I can execute that plan well and lift everybody else. So it's about attracting wealth here and making sure that everybody has the opportunity to live a better life so we can start focusing on the things that matter, and that is the quality of our life in our communities.
Thank you very much. Mr. Garcia, those issues that you can see progress from both sides here.
You know, looking at energy, you know, also inflation. I mean, take a look what it costs to go ahead and fill up 2,500 diesel Cummins today. You know, it costs about $150, which is needed. You know, I know Washington, D.C. doesn't understand that because they drive their little mini cars. But I can say right here, you need to go ahead and transport cattle. You need to transport horses. You need to transport hay. You need to go ahead and transport orchard products. You know, that has an effect on each and every one of us. You know, whether it's the cost right there to the farmer, to the cost of purchasing. That's a direct impact right now. In this rural area where you're working, you know, you may end up having to drive 45 to 100 miles every day for a very good job, a career that you made, and now the government's interfered with the Democrat leadership today on you might not even being able to decide whether you buy, you know, hamburger meat or you need to go ahead and go drive. So, you know, we've got poor leadership right now. And I'll tell you, Trump had it right with our energy efficiency.
All right, Mr. Klippert, your thoughts.
So, sir, having worked in the state legislature for the last 14 years, a word that we came up with a few years ago, and it was a lady who leans Democrat, came up with the word consensus. No longer do you have to give up something to get something. You can work together to agree on something where everyone wins, where it becomes win-win, consensus. And so I absolutely love that. I've had a history of being able to work with the other side of the aisle. I've prime-sponsored bills that have been co-sponsored by Democrats. I have been the co-sponsor of bills where Democrats came to me and asked me to co-sponsor their bills. One of the things I think that we can all agree on that I've been able to work with people in Olympia for the last 14 years on and would gladly work with the other side of the aisle in Washington, D.C. is public safety. I think people are sick and tired of having their catalytic converters cut off their cars. I think they're sick and tired of the murder rate going up, the crime rate going up. I think we can work together to make our communities safer.
All right, and that same question goes to you, Mr. Kopiesa.
You know, for me, Hanford is this untapped potential. You know, right now looks like you know, CERN in Switzerland. That seems to be the world, you know, dominant place for, you know, technology and research. We need to bring this back to the United States. Hanford is a prime example of that. Then the economy here in this district needs to be improved. People need to have better lives. They need to be able to afford to buy whatever they want to buy. Cars, homes, they need to have better roads. The road situation right now in our state, in this district, is deteriorating, you know, rapidly. We have the Moses Lake Grant County Airport, you know, is basically just doing nothing. Why can't we get some of the traffic, you know, international traffic, instead of going to Seattle or going to Portland, you know, come over to Grant County and then route, you know, those passengers on the smaller airliners, you know, to the destinations, make this like a hub, for example. There are plenty of opportunities to improve our lives, and people would agree on that on the both sides of the alley.
All right, thank you very much. All right, one more question here as we begin to wrap up this program, and this one's interesting because I know that you know, if you go onto Ballotpedia or something, we can see how much money they've given your campaigns. Now, there's a fine line, however, between funding a campaign and perhaps a politician being bought. And so that's the context for this question: is how can the influence of money in elections be reduced, and would you support that reduction, Mr. White?
I'd absolutely support that reduction. Right now, we see Dan Newhouse spending about $3 million in the election cycle, and it is almost impossible for people like us right now trying to challenge him to raise that kind of money, because you need the big dollars, you need the deep pockets, you need the PACs, you need the corporates and things like that. And you can only get that once you've been able to be bought. Right now, one of the biggest things that I find have a problem with is the fact that corporations are treated like people, and they can spend almost an unlimited amount of money. Because as an individual, I can only donate $2,900, but as a corporation, I have the same rights and privileges, but it's a blank check. We had a good discussion about term limits on another panel that we sat on. And my response on the term limits was the fact that I'm not so much about term limits as I am about leveling the playing field. Because I believe in the vote and that people will make the right decision to vote bad people out. But when money comes in and it is just so oppressive and all-consuming, it's difficult in order to be able to get them out. So yes, fix the finances.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Garcia, your thoughts?
Yes, when you go ahead and take a look, for example, Dan Newhouse, where the majority of its funding is coming from its corporations, not even so much locally. I mean, you could go ahead and take a look at his website and see what the verbal feedback is on that, and it's not very popular. So, you know, he certainly isn't representing us anymore. That's why he lives in Florida. And the fact of the matter is this, you know, when you are just representing those corporations and no longer representing us, you know, it's time to go, but we also have to have accountability in saying we can't have these corporations just start purchasing out elections anymore. You know, we've learned that we're no longer, the average person's being heard. And every one of us has talked about the fact that you see the big advantage against trying to defeat an incumbent. But I will tell you, I think in this election, it's going to be different. I'll probably be the only one having the least amount of money, but I will win. And so that's going to make a big difference because everybody's voice is going to be heard.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. And before I'll let you get to the question, I want to let you know I've just been told that we might have a little bit more time. So I want you all to prepare. We'll have 30 seconds for closing statements. So we'll get one more word in for you if you desire it. Mr. Klippert, though, I'll restate the question. Do you think that influence of money in elections should be reduced?
So I'd have to see the writing. I have been known as someone in the state legislature who actually reads the bills. And the language means everything. So show me the language, show me how it's worded, and then I could make a decision there. So just to say right now, I cannot make that statement until I see the language. The one thing that really I'm very proud of is the fact that I've been elected now 7 straight terms. My knowledge is that I've been out fundraised by each of my opponents and still have won the elections. We've actually sent checks back to people who have sent checks to us because we didn't think it was appropriate to receive from them. And one thing that surprised me in the legislature when I was there, lobbyists would come and visit me all the time when I was young and a freshman and everything, and then they stopped coming. And it was explained to me why that is. If they find you to be someone who cannot be swayed, you're solid in your principles and your values that you stand for, and you can't be swayed, lobbyists don't waste their time on you because they know you're rock solid. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much. Mr. Kopiesa, your thoughts?
You know, we've been talking about money, and just, you know, Ben just says that, you know, he's probably the lowest, you know, finance, you know, guy in this whole race. I doubt it. So far, I paid all the expenses related to my campaign from my own pocket. And I am my campaign. I'm not like Sessler, 150 people, you know, what did you say, 400,000 you had like when we were in Yakima, 600,000. So it is big chunk of money involved, and I would always question this like, why? Why can't we have, so there's a fee that you need to file, you know, with the state. There's a fee that's supposed to be filed with the federal government, and that should be it. You should go out and meet the voters, talk to them, and if you're good, you know, maybe they'll vote for you. But that's what I believe, and I believe that money is influencing all kinds of stuff, not just elections. That's just my point.
Thank you, Mr. Kopiesa. And Mr. Sessler, your thoughts on money?
I agree with that, and I'll say that this the corporate funding that is able to be poured in here is difficult. That's why Dan Newhouse is able to take, you know, tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars in the last 8 years from China and from China-owned companies, which is a real problem. You know, he's coming out hard, how he's really hard on China now because he's preparing for what's going to be happening in the next few weeks, where it's going to be exposed that he's been taking money from China. I have earned a lot of money in my life. I grew up very poor, but I've been very successful, and a lot of people accuse me of being rich. I have put a lot of money into this campaign. I've amassed more money than all the other candidates combined. That's allowed me to have 14 full-time staff. We have well over 200 volunteers now. We added 101 volunteers last week. I mean, it's been amazing. We're working hard. We definitely have probably the most likely opportunity to beat Dan Newhouse, but I hate the fact that the incumbents are protected as they are. We do need some kind of reform. We are running for the House. The House is supposed to be of the people. We should not have to spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars just to be able to run for these positions. And so I am riding that ledge of like, yeah, I'm doing it because I really want what's best for America, but I also disagree with the fact that it costs so much money.
All right, thank you very much. All right, and before we go, like I said, and let's reset the clock to 30 seconds out there, let's get some closing statements. Mr. Garcia, we'll start with you.
Yes, sir. You know, I've been privileged. I've had a lot of good, positive things happen out of this election. People are hearing the grassroots. People speak right now, and I'm a voice for some of them. Also, I am the only Latino running, and I want to go ahead and say, you know, others have paid attention to what I'm doing. And so someone like Trey Taylor, country music star from Nashville, Tennessee, is going to be holding a benefit concert for me. So we're going to hold that on the 30th. The venue is yet to be determined. And we're going to make an impact, and we're going to win this. So please go to votebengarcia.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Mr. Klippert?
Is that the camera to the viewers?
Yeah, there you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, on July 4th, 1776, 56 men pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to establish this free nation. Many, many years ago, I signed a document and raised my hand to defend this nation against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to look into the character, the truth about each and every candidate that you see before you in the elections. Make sure you know the truth about their character and who they really are. Don't just base what you vote on what you hear them say. Base your vote on who they really are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klippert. Mr. Kopiesa?
Well, I only know debt of gratitude to the United States. You know, I just can't say this any other way. United States has been great to me. It's been great to my family. We would like to continue to, serve, giving back to the community. And that's the best way I know how, is because, as I said, I see the country on the wrong path. I would like to correct that. And when I'm done. I will come home, and I'm done.
Mr. Kopiesa, thank you very much. Mr. Sessler?
Yeah, so I've been full-time for 17 months, and I'll say that I have given my life to this. I've set aside my businesses, I've sold most of my businesses, and I'm really focused on this because the American dream has been so good to me, and it never let me down. And I'll say that the American dream, that, that freedom and that opportunity that we all talk about, would not be possible if it wasn't for our Constitution. Our Constitution is being trampled on right now. I am one of the good guys. I would do this for free. I'm in this for the right reasons, and I thank you for your vote.
All right, Mr. White, 30 seconds yours.
Yeah, as I said, we used to do great things here, and we had a very great future, but somewhere along the way, the politicians abandoned us in order to be able to build their power base and focus on their own careers. And as a consequence, now we have minimum wage jobs and violence in our communities, and that's not acceptable. My goal is to bring our money back in a fiscally responsible way in order to be able to grow the economy here so that we will be energy independent and financially independent, and our future will be bright for everybody. That's my goal.
All right, gentlemen, well, thank you so much. I know these aren't the most comfortable chairs. We'll stand up from them in just a moment, but I want to thank you all for your time, and thank you for being here tonight. Your voters, thank you too, of course. And, best of luck on the remainder of your campaigns. Keep it clean, is all we ask. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Speaking of this 2022 primary, ballots for it are set to be mailed by the end of this week. The deadline to register to vote online is July 25th, but you may register in person all the way up to Election Day. And Election Day, a reminder, is coming up on August 2nd. And for those of you who've been following our coverage this week, thank you so much for your support. We'll round out our week of local election coverage on the county level tomorrow in a race for Benton County Commissioner. That program will air Friday night. And if you missed anything from this very long program or our coverage of these statewide races, we'll be sure to have all of our recorded forums uploaded at nwpb.org/vote. 2022. That does it for us tonight. On behalf of the League of Women Voters and Northwest Public Broadcasting, we thank those of you who tuned in. Have a great night.